Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar. I'm Dr. Emily Guilfoy. I am a chiropractor and acupuncturist here at Palm Health. I am also our Wellness Therapies Lead, which just means that I oversee the operations and education for all of our wellness therapies in our building. Today's topic of our webinar is the full body detox. Today, you'll be learning about different sources of toxins in your daily lives, the body's natural detoxification pathways, and then activities or therapies that you can implement in your day-to-day life to support that natural process. So let's get started. So just to give a quick overview of where we're headed today with our discussion, we're first going to talk about different sources of toxins. So places in our daily lives where we might encounter toxins, whether that's in our home or even in our workplace. We'll discuss the health effects of those toxins, the potential symptoms that you may start to notice in your own body or in others around you who are maybe suffering with toxicity. Finally, we'll discuss the role of the liver and its role in detoxification as our primary detox organ. At this time, we'll also discuss the role of the lymphatic system as it's a vital piece to detoxification as well. And then finally, we will talk about detoxification support, different activities and different lifestyle changes you can make to support detoxification, as well as additional therapies that can be supportive to this process. So we first need to have to take a look and kind of ask ourselves, really, how have we gotten to a place of toxicity? You know, the current world that we're living in is quite toxic, and we have to just take a look to gain some awareness of that world around us. And with this too, I think it's really important that we look at this without fear, without judgment, without frustration, so that we can really just get a grasp of where we are now so we can make changes, positive changes going forward. When I look at our current world and I look at where we've come in the last few hundred years, I see a lot of progress. And while a lot of fantastic things have come from industrialization, with our ability to travel and different advancements in our medical care and in our electronics and our connection with others, quite frankly, our bodies just haven't had the same amount of time to adapt to those changes. The world around us has kind of moved more quickly than our bodies have been able to handle. And we haven't quite adapted new pathways to detox and remove those different toxins and chemicals and things that we're encountering in our environment. And again, we just want to look at this really non-judgmental and without fear so that we can really make changes going forward. We're going to touch base on a few terms here so that we're all on the same page moving forward. The first term here we want to discuss is the term toxin. And this is really referring to any substance with a negative effect on the health of the body. This can be a harmful substance we might encounter in our environment, in our food, or even in the products of our own body's metabolic processes. When we talk about this, one of the sources of those types of toxins can be in our digestive system. This can come from the bacteria and the yeast that are living there. So they are their own organisms. They're conducting their own biochemical pathways, and they have byproducts from those chemical pathways. Unfortunately, our bodies have to deal with those and also have to detox and remove them from our own bodies. So this is just a source of those products. Finally, we talk about detoxification quite a bit throughout this seminar, and that is just simply the removal of those toxins. This is a great image to show us different areas we might encounter toxicity or toxins within our daily lives. Some of these things many of us are familiar with, like car exhaust and pollution, some of the chemicals from cigarettes. You can see those on the right side of the screen. Other things that we might be unfamiliar with are flame retardant chemicals that are in our furniture, whether that's in our homes or in our workplaces, potentially different aluminums or parabens that are in our aerosols, different cosmetics that we might be using. And then perhaps even fluoride that's in our toothpaste. These could be toxins that we might be less familiar with, and we might be encountering that we're not knowledgeable or not knowing of. We have three main types of toxins. First up, we have our environmental toxins. These are things that we have some control over in our daily lives. We do not have control over in our daily lives. These are things like auto exhaust, air pollutants, pesticides, maybe different chemicals that are being sprayed on different farmlands or open areas that are around our homes. We have less control over these items. Secondly, we have our lifestyle toxins, and these are artificial food additives, alcohol, caffeine, meats treated with antibiotics, cosmetics. These are things that we do have a little more control over in our daily lives. With a little more knowledge, we can start to limit our exposure to these items. Finally, we have our endogenous toxins. And like we mentioned before, these are products of our own body's metabolic processes. So these can be the byproducts from the yeast and the bacteria that are living in our digestive system. We can also think of this as chemicals that are maybe being produced from natural pathways. I liken this to maybe like lactic acid building up in our muscles after a hard workout. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is a byproduct and our body does still have to remove it. Here we have a great image of different toxins, especially the highest risk toxins to the human body. And we can see them outlined really on the left side of your screen, but what I want you to pay attention to are the clinical associations and then where these toxins are found in our day-to-day world. So with those clinical associations, we see most things like cancers, diabetes, we see ADHD, we see cardiovascular events as well as dementia. So we can kind of make a general statement here that toxicity can produce metabolic diseases, it can produce neurological diseases, it can also produce cardiovascular diseases, among other things as well. And then on the far right side of your screen, we can look and find where these toxins might be in our daily world. And what I want you to kind of take away from this is really noticing that there are very specific areas where we might find these toxins, like flame retardant fabrics, perhaps rice, charbroiled foods, smoking, so very specific areas. But then there are others that are very non-specific, water, air, fish, two of them say everywhere. So quite frankly, a lot of these toxins are really all around us. We can find them in our homes, in the workplaces, even in the park, in a natural environment. We might encounter some of these toxins in our world now. And this is just to illustrate that there is some level of toxicity that's somewhat unavoidable, and that it's truly important to be supporting our natural detoxification pathways in our bodies, to be doing things on a regular basis to support those processes. A couple other terms here as we move forward through this webinar. We often talk about the body burden when talking about toxicity, and the body burden really refers to the quantity of a chemically foreign substance or its metabolites that accumulate in an individual. The total toxic load refers to the total body burden of all the chemicals, heavy metals, and toxic exogenous compounds. Exogenous here is referring to anything that's originating outside of the body or the being. This is a study that was done by the Environmental Working Group, and I should take a step back and describe the Environmental Working Group. They are a group of individuals who assess kind of toxicity of different foods, as well as cosmetics, different cleaners, and they provide all this information on their website. So it's a great resource for us as we're trying to clean up our environments and limit our exposures. It's a great resource to assess and potentially remove or add different items to our routines based on their toxic load. So they did a study where they randomly selected 10 infants and sampled their umbilical cord blood and tested it for known toxins. And what they found here was 287 toxins in the umbilical cord blood of these infants. And with this, again, we have to look at this without fear, without frustration, but just really to illustrate that there is that level of toxicity that we simply can't avoid. We are born into this world with a certain level of toxicity because of the environment that we have around us. And it's just ever more important to support detoxification in our bodies on a daily basis to ensure that we can remove some of these from our bodies and limit the potential negative effects of them. So this is a lovely cartoon. I liken it to detoxification, and we see Calvin kind of on the left side of the screen saying, I refuse to take out the garbage. I have the right to do whatever I want all the time. And in the center of the screen, you see his dad saying, no, you don't. And he's questioning, I don't. And on the right side of the screen, you see him saying, well, it sure ought to be a right. And of course, we can kind of liken detoxification to really taking out the trash. You know, in the perfect non-toxic world, we could all be like Calvin. We could never take out the trash and never have to worry about taking out the trash. But in our current world, it's absolutely necessary to be taking out the trash and to be supporting that detoxification pathway in our bodies. I also use this time to discuss an analogy of our exposures or our potential toxicity in our bodies and liken it to really removing the trash. We can think about a person who's maybe living in a very, very rural area who is not encountering many air pollutants. They eat a very organic diet. They get good sleep. They don't have any genetic mutations that make it challenging for their body to detoxify. They use very clean cosmetics. We can kind of liken, the toxic load that that person is encountering to maybe like the trash that maybe one person produces in one day, right? So they aren't encountering a lot of toxicity. Their body can really keep up with the demand. And you can think about, Calvin taking out that amount of trash. So he's got just a single bag, maybe full, maybe half full, and he can easily take that out to the end of the driveway and throw that away in the bin. No big deal. We can kind of talk about then a second person who maybe has a genetic mutation that makes it challenging for their body to detoxify. And maybe they're in a more suburban setting and they have a few more air pollutants and auto exhaust. But they do a pretty good job of eating a clean kind of organic diet, low pesticides, low herbicides. They have fairly clean cosmetic products, but maybe they don't exercise as much and they're not getting good sleep. So their body has a little bit higher toxic burden than the previous person we talked about. We can kind of liken that burden to maybe the trash from one person for an entire week. So you can imagine the bag is a little more full. It's definitely fuller. Maybe Calvin has to throw it over his shoulder and kind of hoist it out, but he can still carry it down to the end of the driveway, get it into the bin, no problem. A little more challenging, but still no problem. Finally, we can talk about a third person who is maybe in a suburban setting with lots of air pollutants, lots of car exhaust. They don't have the cleanest diet. There's perhaps more pesticides, more herbicides. They have that genetic mutation, making it challenging to detoxify. Perhaps they also have a dysbiosis in their digestive system so that the microbes are creating more byproducts and aren't digesting their food well. They've kind of been bombarded. They have the full issues with toxicity and inability to detoxify. So we can liken that person's kind of toxic load to perhaps the amount of trash that's produced from a family of 5 for maybe an entire month, right? So you can imagine how full that bag is of garbage. And maybe there's multiple bags, right? There's 3, 4, 5 bags, maybe even more. And you can think of Calvin trying to carry that all the way out to the driveway, down the driveway to the bin, and getting things out the door, right? So we can kind of illustrate here and think about, the bags might even be breaking. There might be spoiled milk spilling out. There might be cans rolling down the driveway. Like, it's a mess. So we have all of these, all this garbage kind of spilling out and spilling over. And it's similar in our livers, truthfully, with our bodies and how we detoxify, and that, the trash is really the toxin. The bag is kind of our liver. And as we bombard our bodies with more and more toxins, the liver can become overloaded and just can't quite keep up with the demand. And at this point, this is when we start to see symptoms of toxicity. This is a good time to talk about the role of the liver when it's functioning normally. On the left side of the screen, you'll see your fat-soluble toxins, and they enter the liver and go through phase 1 detoxification. Underneath, you can see the different chemical reactions that happen for phase 1 detoxification, as well as the nutrients needed for those pathways. We receive an intermediary metabolite, and then that intermediary metabolite is processed through phase 2 detoxification. And again, underneath, you can see the different chemical pathways and reactions that are happening in phase 2 detoxification, as well as the nutrients that are needed for that process. Finally, we are left with a water-soluble waste product, and then that's able to be eliminated through the urine, the bile, and the stool. Now we can take a look at imbalanced detoxification. This is when the liver isn't detoxifying as efficiently as it can. So again, on the left side of the screen, we have that fat-soluble toxin. It goes through phase 1 detoxification. That phase gets upregulated or increased. And we have that intermediary metabolite, or here what we call the reactive intermediate. And what happens is that reactive intermediate almost gets stuck in the middle. So phase 2 detoxification then becomes downregulated or decreased. And we have these intermediaries kind of clustering in the center. And they're not quite making it all the way through both phases of detoxification and able to get through that inert water-soluble state. So those reactive intermediates are then actually more damaging than the original substance, and they go on to damage DNA, RNA, and proteins. We also want to discuss the role of the lymphatic system as it relates to detoxification. I am constantly talking about the lymphatic system with all of my patients. We typically think of it as maybe a few nodes around our neck, maybe in our armpits. But truthfully, it's this vast network of tubules throughout our entire body. We can kind of liken it to our cardiovascular system in that sense. And it acts as a drainage system, and it collects waste products. It collects worn out white blood cells, and it delivers those to the thoracic duct and the right lymphatic duct. And I'll talk about those in a minute, and delivers all of those byproducts and those waste products to that area, so then they can be eliminated through our urine. With the lymphatic system, there are two things that I really want everyone to pay attention to with this system. And the first being that it doesn't have a pump like the cardiovascular system, right? With the cardiovascular system, we have the heart that's able to pump blood and circulate our blood throughout our body. With the lymphatic system, we don't have that. So it relies heavily on physical movement to really move that lymphatic fluid. The second thing I want to make note of is really where those ducts, or I like to call them the doorways, live in our bodies. So we have the right lymphatic duct and the thoracic duct. And both of these doorways are found near our collarbone, or our clavicle up in our chest. And this will become important as we talk about different lymphatic massages and dry brushing as we move forward. So not everyone has the same susceptibility to toxins. As we kind of talked about, some individuals may have an increased risk and can be more susceptible due to either ongoing exposures, maybe some nutrient deficiencies like we saw on that image of the liver. They might have a high sugar, low protein diet. Perhaps there's heavy metals already in the body. Maybe they've had some increased stress, some emotional traumas, that intestinal dysbiosis with that yeast and that bacteria, and perhaps some genetic variations that make it more challenging for their bodies to detox. Some potential symptoms of toxic overload can include things like brain fog, mood swings, difficulty sleeping, fatigue, headaches. And with these, they're somewhat non-specific in that they could be a variety of other issues. And with all of these, they can rather have an insidious onset in that they can just kind of gradually come on rather slowly until one day we really realize pretty abruptly, like, wow, I've been having headaches, every day for the last week. Perhaps that's just an example, but those symptoms really start to kind of accumulate and become worse and worse as you can continue to encounter toxins. So after all of that, the best part of this seminar is really what can we do with toxicity and how can we encourage natural detoxification in our bodies to really best combat the world around us and to be best adaptable to the world around us. So really the best way to detox your body is to first and foremost limit your exposures. This includes buying organic, unprocessed whole foods, avoiding sugar, disposing of batteries properly, avoiding use of plastics, especially with food. Numbers 3, 6, and 7, having proper ventilation in our homes and in our workplaces, and having natural cleaning supplies or those without scents. A great alternative is essential oils. They can be used to add a natural fragrance to any natural cleaning supplies. They're also naturally antimicrobial, antifungal, antibacterial. So they're a great addition to anything that you might be cleaning with. Another fun cartoon for you all here. On the left side of your screen, we have our character saying, "Oof, I need to detox." And our character on the right side of the screen saying, "You have a liver and at least a kidney, right? You're detoxifying now, fella." And the truth is that yes, as you sit here with a liver and a kidney, you are detoxing as we speak. And I think detox can sometimes feel trendy or feel like we have to do something drastic in our lives to really encourage detoxification. And while you can do those things, there are very, very simple measures that you can take in your daily life to encourage just the liver and the kidney, encourage their natural function. So now we begin our part of the webinar, what I call Detoxification 101. So really the basics here of detoxification and detoxification support. The first place we want to start is talking with sleep. Our sleep is really important for detoxification, as that rest time in that horizontal position really allows the blood in our bodies to kind of pool within our liver and allows the liver to cleanse and clean all of our blood and help detox while we're asleep. So again, getting at least 7 hours, hopefully 8 in that horizontal position. And I always tell patients to get in bed by 10:30 and be asleep by 11. And the reason for that is really looking here on the right side of your screen at the horary cycle. And this is something we use in Chinese medicine, and it illustrates the 2-hour window every day for each meridian where they should be kind of resetting or recharging themselves. And the two I want you to pay attention to are at the top of that wheel, and you can see the liver in green. from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. And then the gallbladder as well from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. And those two are a paired system. And so we want to do our best to really support them during that ordinary cycle. So we want to be rested. We want to be asleep from at least 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. and hopefully a little bit longer than that. Next up is hydration. So proper hydration is really supportive to the lymphatic system and encourages the flushing of toxins. My goal for all of my patients is to drink half their body weight in ounces of water every single day. I want to be storing that water and drinking from really glass or stainless steel, avoiding any plastics, again, that number 3, 6, and 7, and then really ensuring that the water is clean with a filtration system. This can be something as high tech as kind of a reverse osmosis type of gadget to filter your water. It can be something as simple as a Brita filter in your refrigerator. With our plastics, we want to keep the plastics away from our water, especially with heat. If you're going to drink anything warm, such as any teas, or if you end up leaving that water in a car in a warm environment, the water has the capability of leaching some of the chemicals from the plastic, and then you would then be consuming that when you drink it later on. So really avoiding plastics is key. We've already kind of mentioned this a few times, but next up on our Detoxification 101 is nourishment. And this really is talking about eating clean, eating foods that are free from pesticides, herbicides, antibiotics, perhaps nitrites, nitrates, things that might be used on our foods, and then consuming foods with a higher fiber content. So we think back to that illustration of the liver that we talked about earlier, and we can recall that those water-soluble products at the end of phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification are really eliminated through our urine, our bile, and our stool. So we want to continue to eat foods with a high fiber content to really keep the bowels moving well. So some detoxifying foods really include plants and protein. Those are going to be your most important components. Cruciferous vegetables like Brussels sprouts, broccoli, and cauliflower. Olive oil, garlic, anything that's kind of high in those omega-3 fatty acids. So again, olive oil, fatty fish, salmon, things like that. Berries for your antioxidants, more fiber. It's that important. We mentioned it twice. A low sugar diet and foods that are high in minerals, healthy, whole, organic produce. As we've already mentioned, elimination is key with detoxification. And this is referring to our bowel movements. Our bowels should be moving at least once per day, ideally 3 times. And we talked about before when we talked about our nourishment, but adding in fiber to really assist in elimination to keep the bowels moving. What happens if our bowels are not moving well? The toxins that we've then eliminated kind of sit in our digestive tract and can potentially become toxic again to our digestive system. So we really want to keep those things moving and keep eliminating. We talk about emotional balance when we talk about detoxification as well. And it's sometimes surprising to think about, but any emotion that we might have, extreme emotion we might have, perhaps we had an argument with a coworker, or perhaps we had a very emotional day with a family member. Any of those changes, drastic changes in our emotions, really do produce biochemical changes in our body. We can think about, as a simple example, maybe our fight or flight response, that if we were to encounter a bear, our body would be rushed with endorphins and cortisol and all of these other hormones and biochemicals that our body still has to process and eliminate. The thoughts themselves can be toxic to our mental health as well. So it's important here to not only detoxify on a bodily level, but detoxify on a mental and emotional level as well. Next up is exercise and movement. I recommend everyone to be moving 30 minutes about 2 to 3 times per week. And this can be aerobic or minimal impact activity. This is really going to allow for good circulation of our lymphatic fluid. We talked about before with the lymphatic system, it's heavily reliant on physical movement to circulate the lymph. If we're not getting enough movement, that lymph can become a little stagnant and kind of hold some of those byproducts and those waste products in our muscles and not eliminate them as well as it could. Exercise is going to increase respiration, which helps to eliminate our carbon dioxide. And it's also going to increase sweating, which helps to eliminate our toxins through perspiration. Finally, we talk about breathing as it relates to detox. And we typically refer to diaphragmatic breathing being the most beneficial. And this can be diaphragmatic breathing. Some people call it belly breathing, but this just really increases our body's ability to oxygenate as well as eliminate carbon dioxide. A good activity to kind of test your body's ability to belly breathe is really just to take a minute or two and you'll place one hand on your abdomen or on your belly and the other hand on your chest, on your sternum, on your breastbone, that area. And you'll just take a few deep breaths and pay attention to where you feel the movement, which hand is moving more. What we have a tendency to do in our current world and maybe our more of stressful moments, we tend to breathe in our chest. And this just limits our ability to oxygenate and it limits our ability to release carbon dioxide. What we want to see happening is really good belly breathing or diaphragmatic breathing. So the goal here is to see, the hand that's on the chest or on the sternum, the breastbone. We want to see that hand being very quiet. We don't want to see any movement there really at all. You want to see all the movement coming from the abdomen. You want to see the belly expanding outward and contracting back in. That tells us that you're really using the diaphragm to breathe. And again, this just gives our body better oxygen and helps to remove that carbon dioxide. It's also very calming to our body and our mind. It assists in that mental detox from negative thoughts. There's an interesting study done with diaphragmatic breathing in athletes. These researchers took a group of athletes, had them undergo the same athletic exercise routine, split them into 2 groups. Group A went into a dark, quiet room and was told to just breathe normally. Group B was taken to a dark, quiet room and was told to breathe diaphragmatically. After about 20 minutes of this breathing, they checked the blood chemistry of these individuals, and they found those that were diaphragmatically breathing had decreased oxidative stress and decreased cortisol levels. So it just illustrates that diaphragmatic breathing is really important for our detoxification and limiting some of that stress that's on our bodies and limiting more of those biochemicals that our body has to remove and detoxify. After all of these daily activities, there are therapies that can be supportive additionally for detoxification. So some of those being cryotherapy, the infrared sauna, biomat, our biofeedback rebalance, specifically on a detoxification protocol. Different supplements, as we mentioned before with our liver, you could see the different vitamins and minerals that were important for all of those biochemical pathways. So we have things like B vitamins, magnesium, zinc, selenium listed here. You'll definitely want to discuss any additional supplementation with your particular healthcare provider. And then finally, we talk about different massages, such as the lymphatic restorative massage, to help move some of that lymphatic fluid from the body and help with that detox, as well as adding potentially a castor oil pack to support the liver with detoxification. Finally, we can talk about dry brushing at home, which is a very easy way to help move the lymph through the body as well. So first up here, we talk about cryotherapy, and this is utilizing liquid nitrogen to really take the body to kind of sub-zero temperatures. It's going to get down to about negative 134 degrees Fahrenheit for a maximum of 3 minutes. Some of those health benefits include a reduction in inflammation, facilitating some joint or injury recovery, relieving muscle and joint pain. You're going to get a boost of endorphins when you do cryotherapy, which can help improve mood disorders. So all of those things, we can help reduce inflammation and reduce some of those biochemicals that the body has to process with detoxification pathways. We're also just going to get a nice mood boost for our mental and emotional detox. Cryotherapy is, again, 3 minutes maximum. This can be done occasionally to daily. And then a few practical things about it. You're going to want to ensure that you're dry, that you didn't just take a shower, that you're wearing your undergarments free of metal jewelry. You'll get some really cute socks, booties, and mittens to wear while you're in the chamber. And then just to eat a small snack and stay really well hydrated before and after, as it does stimulate some of those metabolic pathways to detox. We want to encourage water to help flush some of those toxins. So with our saunas, we discussed 2 different types of saunas, and most of us are familiar with our traditional sauna. This is something that's going to heat the body using convection. So it's going to take those particles that are in the air and circulate them around to generate heat. And this is something maybe around 85 degrees Celsius. An infrared sauna, on the other hand, is actually using electromagnetic energy to warm the body. So it's able to stay at a more kind of comfortable temperature around 60 degrees Celsius. And it's actually going to heat the body more deeply than the traditional sauna. It's going to promote more vigorous sweating at a more comfortable temperature. This is our depiction of electromagnetic energy. And you can see at the top of the screen the wavelength. And wavelength is going to indicate what color we might see the electromagnetic energy at. So we can see in the middle there, we have our visible light spectrum, about from 700 nanometers to 400 nanometers. So this is just light energy. And if anything falls within that wavelength from peak to peak, we see it as visible light. But electromagnetic energy does exist outside the visible spectrum. And so we can see then towards the left of the visible light, we get infrared energy, which is exactly what's being used in the infrared sauna. So with that infrared sauna wavelength, we have far, medium, and near infrared rays. You can see the wavelength of the human body and see then at the bottom of your screen, the far infrared micron output of the sauna. And what's notable here is really that this type of energy is very welcomed to the body. This is natural in our bodies, and it's able to just heat our bodies at a deeper level. Some of the benefits of infrared can include a reduction in fatigue, can help reduce our cortisol levels, can be helpful for coronary artery disease, congestive heart failure, chronic kidney disease, pain, muscle recovery, obesity, diabetes. It's going to help reduce oxidative stress. There are a lot of great aspects of infrared saunas and just infrared in general. Again, with the infrared sauna, we want to hydrate a ton before, during, and after use. Hydration is just going to help us eliminate the toxins that are mobilized from those fat cells. You want to eat a fibrous diet to really encourage elimination in the bowels. You'll work with your physician for a correct prescription for you. Waiting about 20 minutes after exercise to really let your body cool down. Start at about 10 minutes or less your first time to really kind of gauge your toleration of it, and then start to increase from there. The infrared sauna can be used occasionally to daily. And just some practical items. Clothing is optional. You'll definitely want to bring water to drink with you. You want to eliminate any electronic use, and then just being respectful of noise and conversations. Another study that was done looking at the urine of people who were using conventional saunas versus infrared saunas was done recently. And what these researchers found was that the urine of people using conventional saunas was found to be 95 to 97% water. while the urine of those using far infrared saunas was found to be 80 to 85% water, with the non-water portion being principally cholesterol, fat-soluble toxins, toxic heavy metals, sulfuric acid, sodium, ammonium, and uric acid. So this just helps to illustrate how well infrared technology is and how well it functions to mobilize toxins from our bodies. And then the importance, again, of the hydration to help then eliminate and remove those toxins in our urine. There are additional applications of this far infrared technology. On the left side of the screen, you'll see that infrared sauna that we just discussed. And then in the middle of your screen, you'll see the biomat. You'll see some other lamps and different heating pads that use infrared as well along the periphery of the screen. So with the biomat, it is a medical grade FDA approved heating pad. And it's a little bit different than a traditional heating pad in that it is using that far infrared energy to heat the body. It's taking that infrared energy and pushing it through a bed of amethyst crystals. And this helps to deliver negative ions to our bodies. This helps to improve different cell signaling. It also helps to encourage our cells to really dump and remove wastes. And this can be used for relieving muscle and joint pain, soothing minor strains and sprains, alleviating minor back pain, stress, and fatigue. It's really going to be supportive to the immune system, helps to reduce inflammation, and can be really helpful in promoting good restful sleep. Again, with the biomat, because it is using that infrared energy, we want to ensure that you're staying hydrated before, during, and after. Again, working with your physician for your prescription, starting at about 30 minutes your first session and then slowly increasing time at subsequent sessions. This is something that you can do occasionally or daily. And some practical items, you'll want to leave any heavy clothing at home or take off any of those heavy parkas. And you'll want to refrain from using electronics. Next up is our Biofeedback Rebalance. And this is using light to rebalance and stimulate cells in the body to optimize the body's really innate ability to heal itself. And this is going to use some quantum detection of vibrational frequencies within your body to help identify different cell signaling imbalances. And then it kind of safely and gently helps the body achieve harmonic equilibrium. We use a specific detox protocol at Palm to support detoxification, especially mental and emotional detoxification. With this, it is a bit of a longer session at 60 minutes. We recommend every 3 to 4 weeks having another biofeedback session conducted. And then a few practical things. You'll again want to refrain from using electronics and then just relax or nap during the session. It's really a safe treatment, and our only contraindications are really limited to a pacemaker and pregnancy. Next up, we talk about supplementation. We looked at the liver and the healthy functioning liver back at the beginning of this presentation, and we saw the different nutrients that were needed to support both phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification. A lot of those nutrients are B vitamins and different minerals in the body. So things like magnesium, zinc, and selenium, these are all going to be supportive to both phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification in the liver. There's also a great product that's called Liver Protect that has N-acetylcysteine, alpha-lipoic acid, selenium, milk thistle seed extract. And this really supports glutathione production. All of these items are going to be supportive to the liver's detoxification and can be really helpful if maybe we're not getting enough of these nutrients from our food. The best practices with supplementation can be occasionally to daily, but definitely discussing this with your healthcare provider to get the best prescription for you. Finally, we talk about dry brushing as it relates to encouraging detoxification with the lymphatic system. And this is something I do daily. And essentially how you use this dry brush, you're really going to start on your lower extremities, kind of brushing in an upward direction from your feet, kind of up towards your hips, in nice long strokes, moving up through your abdomen, and then doing the same process on your arms. So starting near your hands, moving towards the elbows, to the shoulders, to the chest. And the goal here is always to really be brushing towards your heart. We can think back to the image that we showed earlier with the lymphatic system and recall that those ducts, or those doorways, really live near our chest, near our collarbone or our clavicle. So a good rule of thumb is to always be brushing towards your heart to really encourage lymph to be moving towards those ducts or those doorways to be drained properly. This is something you can do occasionally to daily, and best prior to showering. Some additional considerations include a lymphatic restorative massage, as it can also encourage that drainage or the flow of the lymph, and a castor oil pack, which is a pack, it's wool with castor oil, soaked in castor oil, placed on the liver with a heat pack that helps to encourage the liver to detoxify. Finally, my detoxification regimen really includes daily dry brushing and supplementation to support my body. On a weekly basis, I am taking advantage of cryotherapy, the infrared sauna, and the salt room. I'm usually doing this twice. And then finally, monthly, I am doing a biofeedback rebalance session and a massage to support detoxification. On a daily basis as well, I'm doing all of those items from our Detoxification 101. So really including clean whole foods in my diet, daily deep breathing or diaphragmatic breathing, exercising 3 times a week in an aerobic kind of low impact fashion, getting good restful sleep, at least 7 hours. And among all of those things, in addition to all of those things, I'm doing this lovely detoxification regimen as well. Thank you all for your time and attention today. For further resources, please visit palmhealth.com. I hope you feel encouraged and inspired to implement some of these practices in your daily lives. Thank you.